Welcome back to our series rounding up the best films on X-Car over 2014. Right now we're going to be talking about the best shoot of the year. What has been for us the best experience of getting out there and getting our hands dirty and getting behind the wheel of some amazing cars. Alex?
Well, I've got 4 on the list. The first one being our time with the Ford Escort and Sierra Cosworth. It was rainy, it was damp, it was cold. We got a puncture on the way home, which was interesting, but 2 of the best cars ever. It was so much fun. We had a track, there was banking, I hit a pigeon.
I can attest to the fact that I was in the car filming Alex as he laughed maniacally, steered towards the pigeon, and then screeched in delight as it thumped against the windscreen.
I do have a picture of the track post pigeon. We found the body, it wasn't moving. There's just feathers everywhere. But back to the cars, yeah, the weather was horrible, and that was a bit of a downer, but as shoots go, Nick had his experiment with a VHS camera, which was awesome, very old school.
Would you agree? Good shoot?
I would say yes. Being stuck in a West Ham petrol station for 5 hours afterwards waiting for a tyre. Okay, maybe not 5 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah, 3 hours in a
hours.
petrol station in West Ham. So close to home, but yet so far wasn't the highlight of my year. But I have to admit, it was rainy. Dunton Test Track hasn't been repaved since they actually shook down the original Sierra Cosworth, so you can imagine how fun it was having a ride like that to film on. But yes, it was a brilliant day, and shooting in actual VHS was brilliant. I got an insight into what life into a 4:3 cameraman's world, and it's very upsetting to shoot cars in that because it's just so boxy and horrible, and the colours are, it's just nothing looked great, and you can see why all those 90s camera moves kind of whoa, or just crazy angles to make anything look interesting. But I was really happy with the way that piece went, even though the elements conspired against us.
Some of us are old enough to remember having to film in 4:3 professionally. Showing your age
Who are
there.
those losers? They must be
Who are
ancient.
they? Right, so let's move over to you. What's first on your list?
I've got the Can-Am Maverick, which we both were in about a month ago, and both got to drive the thing. It's an absolutely mega car, but as far as shoots go, you kind of had everything, because you had an off-road car which we got to drift on grass as if it was icy snow because it was just so unbelievably slippery. I got to jump a car for the first time successfully, although after a couple of hairy moments where you're supposed to keep the throttle in as you're in the air, and that's very difficult to do because you jolt upwards and then your instant reaction and instinct is to lift off, and then that sort of plies the nose towards the ground. But thankfully that thing's so good that it managed to survive. So we had the drifting, we had the jump. What else happened on that shoot?
Nothing.
I heard about
completely
this, actually.
Uneventful, calm end to the shoot.
I heard about this. Didn't you make a car go upside down, Drew?
It didn't end up upside down.
Did Maximum Attack go a little bit too hard?
It was a slight roll. That was all.
But yeah, so that was the shoot that had everything, really.
It was so muddy as well. We came back absolutely caked head to foot in mud, and that's usually a good sign that you've had a good time. Well, speaking of muddy, one of my highlights was the second episode of our Defender Diaries, where we took the Defender out to Easner to actually get taught how to use it properly. And it's a nice little short film in our Defender Diary series. It's not massively in-depth, but it really shows you what that car can do when it's confronted with difficult circumstances. And although it hasn't really been developed as much as other Land Rover products, it doesn't really matter because it can still do everything you need it to do. And I've driven brand new Range Rovers and other cars in the Land Rover lineup, and they're really good at going off-road, even though they feel really luxurious. This doesn't feel luxurious. This feels like it's meant to go off-road.
I think it's one of the coolest cars ever, and I think it's way cooler than the G-Wagon. And seeing that thing in that colour, which is gorgeous, by the way, plunge through mud in slow-mo on that film, I think is one of the best kind of visuals of our year.
What's next on your list?
Shoot number 2 is the night shoot with the Rolls-Royce Wraith. I love a good night shoot. I think the car looks great. It was big, it was fast, it was comfy, it had everything you could possibly want, and you couldn't hear a thing inside the cabin apart from the aircon and your own breath.
Quietest V12 I've ever driven. Unbelievable car. How was the shoot for you?
I do not agree with that analysis at all, because I hate night shoots in London, because I have to get outside the car while Alex has to stay in the Rolls-Royce. So it might be the nicest place to be on the inside, but watching it waft past you about 200 times and being outside and cold and at night and lonely and having worked all day and all night, yeah.
Hey Nick, do you remember that bit of the shoot where we took a 20-minute break, put on the digital television in the Rolls-Royce so you could watch the football?
I do remember that. That was great, actually. That was cool.
So
There's not.
Sounds like you had a terrible night.
Forget that. That was a great shoot. I got to watch TV in the middle of a shoot, which never happens. No, it's yeah. The night shoots are quite hard because, in hindsight, after I look at them, I'm like, yeah, it looks great, and it's got an atmosphere, London at night, and I really have loved like the Aero Coupe is a wonderful film at night, and I think that's one of our best looking films. But yeah, at the time, they're not much fun for me.
And the complaints are endless.
Hey, I was filming the details of the i3 while Alex was sat in the crew car. When it came to doing his piece to camera, he's like, oh, it's raining quite a lot. Should we do it under a bridge? And I don't know how, but he managed to convince me after I've been standing in the rain for
More
an hour
for
and
you.
a half. Yeah, exactly. That's my fault.
Hey, we did it under a bridge. It looked good. I got a compliment on that film this morning, actually. In fact, the i3 is on my list. Another night shoot. But, again, it worked. It suited the car. The car was brilliant. It was our first shoot of 2014. I picked it up from BMW on the 3rd of January. And it was a cracking shoot. The car was amazing. It just worked. Something about that felt right. I enjoyed that shoot as much as I enjoyed the car.
If you ever find yourself in central London on a late and rainy night and you see a really nice car drive by, have a quick scan around to see if you can see a miserable Nick on a street corner.
A homeless
somewhere.
person looking like he desperately needs sleep.
And that he's just stolen a camera.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next on my list is the one I think we have on all of our lists is, again, very early on in the year, all three of us went and took our arts exam.
Oh, that's on your list?
That's on my
Is
list.
that on your list?
No, it wasn't actually. But
I didn't have to lift a camera, so it's automatically one of my favourite shoots. But no, it was such a wonderful day because it was all three of us doing something together, which I don't think we'd really done before. It wasn't a presented piece; it was more of a natural documentary type feel. So we were just sort of being ourselves because we had enough to focus on that day. And really, it might not have been on all three of our lists or two of our lists anyway if we'd have failed, or any of us had have failed, because that would have been a nightmare scenario. If you two had passed and I'd have failed, it'd have been the worst day of my life.
It would have been so funny though.
For
Quite
you
funny,
two, it
yeah.
would have been horrendous for me because
You wouldn't have lived it down.
no, exactly. And we probably all knew individually that we could not live it down, and that it was there to be captured in glorious HD.
The Mickey taking you'd still be taking the piss now.
The thing is, I wouldn't describe it as an easy test, but it wasn't too much of a struggle for us all to pass.
No.
The only thing that really could stand in your way is you pushing yourself too hard on the track. That's the one thing that you could fail on. If you span out on your lap where you're getting tested, well then clearly you're going to fail. And that's if you're having fun and you've been driving all day and you feel like, I can carry a little bit more speed through this corner, it could very easily be that's the time you lose a little bit of grip.
Well, for me, it's also faster cars passing because you had to be really on it and observing properly to get that. That was the bit that I was worrying, that you get someone streaming past you, you wouldn't have seen them and held them up. But it was during the day actually there was a bit of pressure and you felt it, but the relief at the end and the joy of all of us being happy for each other, I thought that was a great moment. And it's not a day you'll forget really, the day you got your racing license.
But I also remember on my assessed lap overtaking one of you two.
It wasn't me, I know that much. No one overtook me on my assessed laps.
It was probably me. If you overtook someone, I don't know. I was too busy just trying to pass.
But what annoys me is that on the film, he said, you know, you've just overtaken. You said Drew, and he goes, I think it was Nick. And watching back the film, I was like, no, it wasn't. Now everyone think you overtook me, and you did. And then I was like, I can't ask for that to be cut because that's completely selfish. But now the world knows.
Yep.
And as long as more people watch this
Yes,
video
more
than that
people
video.
watch this, I will promote the crap out of this film.
Right, what else hasn't been mentioned yet for shoot of the year?
It's not really shoot of the year, really. I've been thinking, actually, it was a nightmare to do, but it was the Crazy Kart indoors here, the Crazy Kart race with you two. Basically, 20 minutes charge on that thing if you're 65 kilos. I think maybe you, but us two, definitely not 65 kilos, and therefore the time that you could drive it was diminished, maybe about 15 minutes. 12 hours to charge. We only had 5 of them. So basically, we could shoot 4 or 5 hours a night if we were lucky. And that made it the most probably laborious, long-winded film to make for the result. But it was a lot of fun because in between takes, when I wasn't being Nazi-ish about using up the power, you did get to drive it around a bit. And then I got to do the tracking. So driving those things around the office was basically like a mini fantasy.
I got to drift around the office and shoot my boss in the face with a Nerf gun, and still got to keep my job the next day.
Both of you did, because you did it in the actual film, and then Nick did it to actually get the reverse shot of it. So I had both of you unload a full clip in my face.
Right in front of you, just offloading it into your face.
Yeah, it wasn't the most pleasant of shoots. The end result is hilarious, though. Nick's done a great job on the edit. We certainly enjoyed putting it out there, and if you haven't seen it already, make sure that you check it out.
It's certainly one of the highlights of my year. I've got one more.
Yep.
For two reasons. One, the weather was glorious, if a little too warm. Two, I got to drive a DeLorean. That was such a cool car, and the intro shot you did with the mount on the car and the walk and the chase, and that was awesome. It was a cool car to drive. It was a terrible car to drive, and the shoot turned out great. It looks amazing.
After the end of the shoot, you said, right, you can drive it back to the house, because we actually had it for the night. There was the most obscene lightning storm that I will ever see, just lightning that just looked completely fake and unreal, while you were playing The Power of Love on your iPhone, and I was driving DeLorean down the highway, and I was like, pretty good day as far as it goes.
When you watch the film, you'll see some lightning going on in the background, which is 100% genuine.
Yeah.
We're
not that good.
We're not that good. On the day, we saw this front of clouds just getting closer and closer, so dark that we thought we were going to get rained off. And it seemed to just part in front of us, go around us, and join again on the other side. So we had lightning all around us.
And we had a car of stainless steel in the middle, so you'd think, maybe.
And we were standing between electricity pylons.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, the DeLorean film is up on YouTube and on xcar.com, as are all the films that we've mentioned in this episode, and indeed our entire back catalogue. So make sure that you're well up to date with everything that you've seen us describe here today. If you want to stay up to date with everything we're doing in 2015, remember to follow us on Twitter. We are xcar official, and find us on Facebook. Give us a like there. Make sure that you stay completely up to date with everything that the three of us and our extended team are taking care of. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.